Games have a big problem these days. They're just not manly anymore. They have been completely emasculated. Where is the masculinity? And at the same time, these games are also killing your masculinity. And I don't know about you vegan, soy diet, OnlyFans, simping, woke DEI, beta salad eating, brokey broke boys, but I'm tired of it. Which is why for the past few days I've been playing Space Marine 2, a real game for real men. And like a real man, I'm not even gonna introduce it. I'll just dive into it because masculinity don't just sit and talk, it takes action. Remember when Taylor Swift said, "If I was a man, then I'd be the man." Tyrus is the man she was talking about. He's so manly that he punches a flower in the face to clear his way through the jungle. He smashes rocks with one kick, but sometimes he'll just move it out of the way. The point is, he's the boss, the alpha dog. He's a man on a mission and he don't give a dimmy-dum damn about your little feelings. Okay, that was a little out of whack. But all jokes aside, Space Marine 2 is undeniably badass. It's a power fantasy through and through, and that makes it a real breath of much needed fresh air. Because after spending countless hours in games where you're either dying to the same enemy 10 times, or slogging your way through the world, or grinding for hours before you have the final showdown, I can't overstate how good it feels to play something that just puts a weapon in your hands and lets you mow down everything in sight. And speaking of power fantasies, it does an excellent job of making you feel like the top dog. After all, you are an ultramarine. Humans kneel down as soon as you step into the room and address you as my lord. You can lift a gate that 5 humans can't do together. If that's not enough, you can break objects by just walking into them. Imagine shattering your enemy's tombstones simply by touching them.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're making me feel like I'm the man.
This theme continues into actual combat as well. When you're not shooting Tyranids with your bolter, you're either sawing them into half, or smashing them into pieces with the hammer, or slashing through them with the power sword. Each weapon has its own combo and special moves, so you can take your pick. Bigger enemies can be taken down with a finisher, which looks really cool in a Doom meets God of War fashion. And as I walked through thousands of Tyranid bodies, I thought about what my Prothean friend once said.
Stand in the ashes of 1,000,000,000,000 dead souls and ask the ghosts if honor matters. This silence is your answer.
You know what a Space Marine's answer to that is?
No excuse for cowardice.
Certifiably badass. But it's not all exactly a cakewalk. The game poses a fair challenge, mostly because the minions never stop coming at you. I mean it, they will not hesitate to overwhelm you with sheer numbers. And just one wrong move can bring you to the brink of death. I almost died numerous times just because I stopped to grab some ammo or decided to attack the wrong enemy only to be stun locked by a different enemy from behind. Thankfully, your squad members have your back. Chiron and Gadriel will be there to revive you in case you get incapacitated, and they do a pretty good job of taking down enemies too. Most of the time they'll stun the big enemies and leave them for you to use the finisher, but if you're busy killing someone else or can't get there in time, they'll rip that bozo apart themselves. And in case they're in trouble while you're incapacitated, you can revive yourself as long as you have a guardian seal on you. On the normal difficulty, you can be revived twice before the mission fails on death, and on higher difficulties you can only be revived once. The guns feel good to use too. Every gun has a certain kick to it, and while some are basically another variant of the same weapon with a minor adjustment, there was enough variety for me to switch frequently depending on the situation. At times I went with the carbine to swiftly shoot down the minions, other times I saw more use for the melter gun for getting up close with the enemies, and sometimes I switched between the bolter with the grenade launcher and the sniper rifle to take down the heretics. Space Marine 2 also makes good use of the DualSense adaptive triggers. The implementation in itself isn't anything mind-blowing, but it adds a little punch to the shooting. But why I feel the native support is worth mentioning is because 2 recent games that I tried said that they support the DualSense natively, but it doesn't work until I enable Steam input. Space Marine 2 says the DualSense will work natively, and it does, so kudos for that. There are times where I want to compare it to Gears of War, but while Gears of War focuses on cover shooting, Space Marine definitely puts more emphasis on melee encounters. It's even better when you have the jetpack, which allows you to dash in quickly to close distance, or to jump up to get to higher ground. Then you can either hover in the air and shoot, or slam into the ground and send the enemies flying. This was undoubtedly my favorite part of the gameplay. Normally, bigger enemies lead to a duel, where you can lock onto them and even parry their attacks. Parrying smaller enemies will kill them instantly, while bigger ones are stunned. This allows you to take a quick gunshot and deal some good damage. Killing enemies with parries and finishers is also how you refill armor in the middle of combat, and quick retaliation can help you recover some health too. Like I said, this game embodies the song.
A little less conversation, a little more action.
One thing that I love about Space Marine 2 is the intro mission. Not only does it give you a small taste of what's to come, it very succinctly sets the tone for the rest of the game. War surrounds you from all sides, the Tyranids are taking over everything, the heretics are back, and it's your job to stop them. And that's something you can literally see around you right from the beginning because you dropped smack in the middle of it. As soon as you land, you're greeted by a bloody, explosion-filled backdrop, which frankly looks kinda beautiful from the distance, almost like a scene from a painting. Smoke and steel drive the Imperium forces on the foundation of grit and faith, and the game portrays that really well. Remnants of tanks and airships lay around the battlefield, while corridors and hallways have some impressive details, punctuated by Imperium symbols that remind you of the ever-watchful eye of the Omnissiah. The themes of service, loyalty, and honor are repeated throughout the game, and there's an air of evident religious fanaticism all around you. For the Emperor is not just a motto, it's a lifestyle for the Ultramarine. Squads talk about honoring fallen brothers by avenging them sevenfold. The zealous Archmagus reminds the soldiers of their duties. Friends are quick to turn on you at the mere mention of the word heresy, and Chiron goes nuts at the sight of the heretics. So even though I found the story a little lacking, I loved listening in on the background chatter, and the way the game crafts this atmosphere of courage and duty and brotherhood to draw you in is impressive. I won't give any details or spoilers about the story itself, but it's pretty straightforward, which also makes it a little predictable. Not that there's anything wrong with it, the game knows what it's about and it sticks to it. But it has its moments, one of which is especially surprising and something that fans of the first game can look forward to. And the game has some light-hearted moments too, where you can hear some good-natured banter between your squad mates. And then there's one scene where after your team takes down a Carnifex, Titus starts bragging about how he once fought a Carnifex alone with nothing but a bolter, and that was real sport.
That was sport. No one likes to show off.
Unless what they're showing off is dope as
But it brings out the individual personalities of the squad mates, which is really good, otherwise they would sound all the same. After you're done with the story, the game offers 2 more modes to continue playing. The first is Operations, in which you get to play the missions as a custom team with completely new objectives. This basically shows you what the other squads are up to while Titus and his team do the story missions. The second mode is PvP, which has its own modes. In the multiplayer modes, you can pick between different classes, level up weapons, unlock skins and customize your armor, the whole shebang. Each class has its own weapons it can use along with a unique ability, and some of the armors look cool as hell. Now, I wasn't able to really get into multiplayer because matchmaking was limited as the game isn't out yet, so my review is more about the single player experience. But I will say, from what I played so far, I can really see myself having a lot more fun playing through the game in co-op. PvP isn't really my cup of tea, so that I'll leave to the experts. Space Marine 2 took me about 11 hours to finish, which includes the time I spent in photo mode, strolling around and looking at the world and stopping to see the sights. So if you're just focusing on the story, it should take you about 10 hours or so. After major time sinks like Elden Ring and Star Wars Outlaws, this is a very pleasant change of pace. So I definitely had quite a bit of fun with my time in Space Marine 2, for the most part. Performance was also consistently good throughout the game. I had it running at max settings at 1440p, and I didn't see any frame drops below 60 FPS outside of one fight that had way too many enemies on the screen. Just an FYI, this was on an RTX 4070 Ti Super. I spoke to a friend who played it on an RTX 2080, and he said he was facing some issues, so your mileage may vary. My favorite parts were the missions with the jetpack, where I would go all in your face and pound the enemies into the ground and finish them off, essentially running and gunning like I was playing Doom. Sadly, this happened very little as most of the missions don't let you use the jump ability. And then there was one time when the game got stuck on an infinite loading screen and I had to restart the game to make it work. Thankfully, it happened right after a checkpoint, so I didn't lose any progress. But all that is fine. The big question is, should you play Space Marine 2?
That all depends.
If you're tired of all the pussified, non-manly, emasculated shit in games, definitely go ahead and get it right now. This will pump you with so much testosterone, you will feel like twice the man you could ever be. I mean, if you really believed all that and you didn't pre-order the game the day it was announced, can you really call yourself a manly man? But just in case you're normal, relatively speaking, Space Marine 2 is still a solid title. It keeps things simple and doesn't pretend to be anything more than it is. There's no open world that can get boring, no RPG crap, no looty-shooty shenanigans, just good old-fashioned running, gunning and slashing. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles like ray tracing and ray reconstruction and whatnot, but that also serves as a very good reminder that it's still possible to make a good-looking game without forcing RTX down everyone's throats. In essence, with Space Marine 2, what you see is what you get, and I find it really hard to complain about that. Personally, I'm very much into the single player aspect of games, so I would wait for a little bit of a price drop. But I can also see it being a lot more fun with friends in a very Gears of War meets Helldivers kind of way. So if you enjoyed the first game and you already have someone to co-op with, or if you want to jump into the PvP which should keep you busy for a few months, I'm sure you'll get a lot more value out of the $60 price tag.